A hub of activity sprung into life on the tallest and largest of the palace spire's docking platforms. Young workers now rushed to the docking pylons spaced out along the edge of the platform and prepared huge ropes and equipment in a well-drilled and organized display. Within this busy activity, a man emerged from the spire doorway and made his way across the platform. His long, flowing blue robes had faint, iridescent stars embroidered on the surface that shone and changed color in the gentle breeze. The man was well kept, with shoulder-length blonde hair, and looked to be in his early 40s, but something in his deep blue eyes gave away a wisdom far, far beyond his years. Behind this man followed a small group of men who scurried around behind him, holding scriptures, tomes, and scrolls. Here and there one would nearly drop his armful of equipment, only to stumble and regain them again before things clattered to the ground. All this whilst trying to keep up with the young man and searching for something within the tomes of importance. The man stopped short of the platform edge and raised his hand to his brow, as if peering out into the blazing mid-morning sun. Marjorie Drift. "Sir, the Majestic is on its final approach. What would you have us do?" A voice came from behind the man. The man did not move his gaze away as he focused heavily into the light clouds that here and there patterned the sky, eventually replying in a calm yet somewhat quizzical tone, as if his mind was already forming hypotheses and questions in his head.
"Fetch a medical team and prepare the guest room in my tower for our new arrival."
The man behind him nodded quickly and hurried away. Drift did not take his eyes off the skies. The heat of the Damarcan day was high as the sun was given almost unhindered access to the vast Damarcan plains and palace below. Only the gentle, forgiving breezes that would give movement to his robes were the means of relief in this sweltering, hot morning. He and the workers on the platform seemed used to this as a natural, everyday occurrence. Drift stood in silence as the workers around him prepared for this important arrival. His entourage of followers stood patiently behind him, their black and white robes flowing and flapping gently in the warm breeze. Drift's eyes narrowed, as if to focus more, his eyes catching the reflective glint of light that can shine for an instant when sunlight touches polished metal. Looking closer, Drift could now make out the shape of a sailing ship in the distance, making its way through the clouds towards him. His stance instantly relaxed, like a huge weight was lifted off his shoulders as the huge sailing vessel now could be seen more clearly. This was the Majestic, Damarcan's flagship and most powerful warship in its sky fleet. At over 300 feet in length, it supported 5 main masts to carry its array of sails, and along its flanks were 4 rows of gun hatches that gave it a frightening display of firepower. And the Keflor stone, the single largest metallic stone found in Damarkus, formed its keel and shone blue in the sunlight. Drift watched on as the Majestic now closed the distance rapidly, and a deafening horn sounded as the boat approached, her sails full of energy that propelled it at an incredible speed for its size. The ship sailed clear of the palace spires and behind a group of clouds, momentarily obscuring Drift's view, before emerging once again to his far left. Then, with an agility that would shock many, the Majestic banked and turned rapidly, swooping around to align itself with the docking platform. Another deafening blast of its horn rang out as it turned around and aligned itself with the docking platform and made its final approach. Drift lost sight of the enormous ship as it passed again behind the clouds nearby, only for it to suddenly burst into view, as if charging out of the foggy vapors. The ship immediately glided in towards the docking platform, and men could be seen scurrying around, lowering sails, and preparing the anchoring ropes to be thrown to the platform crew. Drift waited patiently and watched the Majestic pull alongside and begin its mooring procedure. This ship was enormous, even by warship comparisons, and Drift could visually see and feel the amount of energy and Keflor lining its hull to help keep it afloat. Drift adjusted his robes and awaited the Majestic to lower its boarding ramps. After a few minutes, crews started to leave via these ramps and assist the platform workers in securing the warship. Finally, Drift saw what he was waiting for. The captain and a small group of people flanked by guards, their white tabards with golden embroidered sails upon their chests, disembarked the ship and made their way towards him. "Marjorie Drift," smiled the captain as he walked forward to shake Drift's hand.
Captain Sanson, how wonderful to see you and the Majestic once more.
"Oh, well, the pleasure is mine, Marjorie. Though I must say, receiving orders so late in the day to take a detour from our route was a little surprising." Captain Sanson glanced back momentarily in the region of the Majestic.
Yes, I understand, Captain. But you were the only ship capable of such a mission in the area, I assure you.
Drifted replied. "Well, the Draconis ship Laconza was there as predicted, and we took on the passenger as instructed, though she has not regained consciousness at all." Drift looked down at the stretcher and saw a young woman with raven black hair, striking elven features, high cheekbones and near flawless skin, yet rounded ears. Drift could sense there was more to this woman than meets the eye. There was something different. Drift nodded to his own personnel, and they moved forward to take control of the stretcher and started to lead her away.
Take her to the quarters I've prepared, and have the medical team stabilize her. I don't want her waking up just yet.
Drift spoke to a servant who nodded and hurried back to the tower. Drift waited a moment until he and Captain Sanson were more or less alone, except for the guards near the captain.
So, Captain, were you followed?
No, we were not, and the Laconza reported no problems during their journey. This passenger must be of very high importance for her to oversee the operation. Drift said nothing and offered nothing more than a friendly smile. There was a pause, then Drift deftly changed the subject.
So, Captain Sanson, you are leaving back to the fleet now?
The captain glanced over his shoulder towards his ship, then shook his head. No, we will take on provisions here and leave at first light tomorrow, when we have enough heat in our keel.
Well, thank you, Captain, for your assistance in this matter. But if you will excuse me, I have important things to attend to, as I am sure you are keen to prepare the ship for your journey tomorrow.
Captain Sanson nodded and took Drift's hand once more. It was a pleasure, sir. If the fleet can be of assistance in the future, you need but ask. Drift shook his hand and nodded, watching the captain turn and head back towards his ship along with his guards. His eyes lingered on the captain as he returned, before he himself turned and headed back towards the tower, his long blue robes billowing as he walked. Drift opened the door to the study within his tower and stepped through. There was a sense of urgency about him as he quickly stepped through and approached his desk. As he sat down, his hand created a gesture in the air, and the floating lamp that illuminated his desk moved away to lower the light source in that area. Drift sat and straightened out his robes and took a deep breath. On his desk were many tomes and scriptures in various tongues and translations, and quills of ink. The study had a timeless quality to it. It felt very old, far older than the study's owner seemed to portray, yet he did not seem out of place by being there. Drift removed a tiny, delicate pin from within his robes and proceeded to push the pin into the side of one of his rings, forcing the plain gold ring to deform and form a tiny cross. Drift then moved his hand towards a large box on the edge of his desk and placed the misshapen edge of the ring into a matching cross-shaped groove on the box's front door. There was a pause, then a gentle click as the box's locking mechanism sprang into life, and the door gave way slightly to indicate it was indeed unlocked. Drift gently pulled on the door and opened it to reveal a crystal ball that was black with swirling shadows whirling around within it. There was a second or two of inactivity until Drift's eyes focused on the swirling ball. Then suddenly, purple sparkles and lines appeared and whirled around it as if they were inside a tornado. Then the ball cleared and seemed to calm, the ball falling dark and silent. Drift could make out a shadow in the darkness within, then a familiar voice that spoke, calm and soft. "Yes?" Drift seemed to take comfort in hearing that voice again, and spoke back in a similar calm way.
It has begun.
There was a moment of silence before the voice replied, I am on my way. Instantly, the crystal ball fell silent and inactive. Drift said nothing more, but reached out, gently closed the door to the box, which made another delicate but intricate click. He sat at his desk in silence, his mind in deep thought, as the world around him continued at its own pace. 3 days had now passed, and Drift sat in his study room, deep in thought over an open book on the desk before him. His eyes slowly took in every bit of information from the arcane tome, which, even by his library, looked very old. A soft knock came to his door, which threw his concentration. Blinking and bringing himself back to his surroundings, he took a sip of water. Enter! A young apprentice stepped through the open door and cleared his throat before speaking. Marjorie Drift? The patient is awake and wishes to speak with you.
Splendid, you may go. I will be there shortly,
Drift replied. The apprentice nodded and backed out of the room, gently closing the door as he left. Drift picked up a small pouch from the desktop and got to his feet.
Let's see what all the fuss is about.
He mumbled to himself as he straightened his robes and stepped through the door, out into the tower corridor, and made his way to the girls' room. Drift made a gentle yet firm knock on the door of the woman's room and waited. After a few seconds, a female voice replied,
Please enter.
Drift opened the door, stepped inside, and closed the door behind him again. Turning around, he saw the woman who was delivered by the Majestic sitting before him on an ornate chair. The woman gestured for him to sit in the chair opposite her, which Drift did with a courteous smile.
Thank you so much for seeing me,
Drift said as he sat himself down. The woman had an athletic build, with shoulder-length black hair that shone in the sunlight filtering through the window. Her eyes were deep brown and had a slight Eastern look to them, yet the rest of her face, her high cheekbones and slender jaw, looked more Eldar than a human. Her skin was pale, and it seemed even more so in contrast to her dark hair. She did not speak a word, but gave him a quizzical look whilst holding the sleeve of her white dress.
Ah, yes,
Drift acknowledged with a smile.
I hope the dress is to your liking. The armor you arrived with I thought far too hot to wear in this Damarkan sun. Much better to wear something cool. After all, we are not going to war.
Drift offered her a friendly smile. The woman smiled and nodded before asking,
And I have you to thank for helping me to heal.
Well, we just took you in and gave you some space to heal and recuperate,
Drift replied.
I am sure you have many questions, but if I may ask one first, do you have a name?
There was a pause before she answered, as if trying to recall in her own mind.
Lemeneth. I am known as Lemeneth.
And I am known as Drift.
The woman paused a moment, as if to digest this information, then asked,
Okay, so where am I? I do not know this place, or even this world.
So she has the concept of other worlds and reality.
Drift thought to himself.
Well, you are in the world of Damarkus, and you are in the largest city known as Damarkan.
Lemeneth frowned to herself and seemed puzzled.
But the last I knew, I was in the Great Weave.
She suddenly stopped herself, as if realizing this man might not know that the Great Weave was.
It's okay. We know of the Great Weave.
Drift spoke reassuringly. The woman smiled a little and gave a nod.
Okay. Well, I remember I was in the Weave, but it's all so out of sync.
Lemeneth frowned and struggled with her recollection.
Well, it was the Rangers who found you.
Lemeneth rose and walked out onto the large stone balcony and looked out over the view before her. Drift gently placed the pouch he had brought with him and placed it on the table before him, before standing and joining the girl out on the balcony. The view was breathtaking, and if you had a fear of heights, perhaps a little terrifying. This balcony was part of one of the largest towers in the city. Several hundred feet below, the city could be seen in all its huge magnificence, its people looking nothing more than ants to the naked eye. The city itself was enormous, and naturally rose out of two enormous landmass of rock and crags, almost looking like the base of two mountains, whose peaks formed twin spires. Beneath the city walls spread out around the base of the mountainous spires, the city of Damarkus itself thrived. Buildings and streets stretching out over the base of the rising mountainous walls, its long, straight streets stretching out like a spider's web from the city's center. Far out could be seen the massive stone walls that defended the city. These walls were tall and thick, with towers evenly spaced along the wall perimeters. Both of them stood in silence, Drift just watching Lemeneth as she gazed out in silence and took in the view. She looked out further beyond the city walls and saw grassy plains, and far, far off into the distance, she could make out foothills shimmering in the heat of the day. Then, even further off, she could make out the misty haze of clouds with peaks of what seemed to be mountains at the very edge of her vision.
Is it always this hot?
Drift smiled and took a step closer to stand beside her and share her gaze.
Well, we are very exposed here. There is no escaping the sun on these plains. I can assure you that other places around Damarkus are not this intense.
Lemeneth looked around her, as if to look for other landmarks, but the haze of the day's heat made it near impossible. She could make out shapes and shadows. Water? Trees? She could not be sure as the land shimmered and moved around.
What is the meaning of this place?
She inquired.
You mean, why has this place grown?
Well, yes, there is no river, no towns for trading. Why has such a city grown?
Well, long, long ago, Damarkus was just a military outpost where a small town had grown from. It had the finest horse riders known, but it was mainly hunters and plains people who lived here.
Drift replied.
Then came the darkness. Out of the north they came, dark hordes. They were never a threat in the past, but they had a new force uniting them into a very powerful and effective war engine.
North? Out of the mountains over there?
Lemeneth asked. Drift nodded.
They are very far off. In fact, on colder days you can't see those peaks. It's the heat that makes them look closer. Those mountains are known as Aquila,
Drift explained.
a foul and desolate place full of swamps, marshes, and desolate wastelands. Humans, orcs, and even the underworld shadow elves joined forces and swept down upon the free lands you see here. Damarkus took a stand and met them head-on with a great warrior at their head. Together, after a desperate battle, the Shadow Realm was forced back and finally defeated, sending them back to their shadowy realms.
Drift paused, as if to let her take in this information before continuing.
This place grew rapidly as a symbol of the land's great defense against darkness. Very quickly, over a few short decades, this small town grew and became what you see now. Its small outpost of soldiers swelled in size until we now have 15 corps. Each corps has 20,000 men. Damarkus' army is now enormous, and that's not taking into considering the sky fleet with several hundred ships that patrol the skies.
Lemeneth frowned as she did the calculations.
Wait, that's an army of over 300,000 men.
Drift nodded.
Aye, it is. Damarkus is now a power to be respected and has kept the peace here for several centuries.
Lemeneth said nothing and seemed to be trying to digest the information she had been given.
Why was I brought here, Drift?
Drift considered his response before replying.
Well, I thought this might be the best place for you. We have the best medical facilities around.
Drift paused a moment before turning away from the balcony and heading back inside, leaving Lemeneth still staring out over the city.
Besides, You might yet have a place and role to play in this world. All will become clear soon enough, my dear.
Drift stepped inside and quietly collected the pouch from the table. Lemeneth took a moment to take a lingering gaze of her new world before returning inside.
I suggest for now that you take your time to familiarize yourself with the city and grounds. The royal gardens here are particularly amazing,
Drift said as he slipped the pouch back into his robes. Lemeneth said nothing, walking over to her side cabinet and poured a jug of water into her goblet. The chinking of ice dropping into the goblet rang out and made her rise an eyebrow.
Ah, yes, the ice.
Drift smiled as he opened the door to leave.
Well, what is the point of having a mage's tower and place of learning if its students can't practice their arts and make life a little more comfortable, Besides, the weave has a strong influence on this world and does odd things.
Drift offered her a friendly smile, turned, and left, closing the door behind him. Lemeneth watched the door close, then, with goblet in hand, turned and walked back to the balcony to look over the land once more. Drift returned to his study, closed the door, and immediately locked it behind him. He then sat himself down at his desk and spoke calmly.
A chantry.
Instantly, the lights lowered in intensity, and the room was lit with nothing more than a light no stronger than a candle. Drift slowly opened the pouch and let it fall open. Inside was a piece of rock no larger than one that would fit easily in the palm of your hand. The rock was roughly triangular in shape, and it was clear its edges were natural, not crafted. The rock, now clear of the pouch, shone brightly, lighting the room with a myriad of rainbow colors. The rock's surface moved as if covered in a never-ending, ever-moving, oily film of color. As Drift studied it, the rock would shake every so slightly, as if its surface was cracking and releasing gases. But the intensity of what Drift was witnessing was surely a surprise even to him. Drift sat back in his chair and ran his hand through his hair, almost in a nervous reaction, never for a moment taking his eyes off the rock. He gasped to himself.
By the gods!